Let's skip straight into it. You're about to fall asleep to the most relaxing and edifying Bible stories. Go ahead and subscribe to never miss any of these Bible stories. Save these for later so you don't miss this video. Number 1. The creation of the world. In the beginning, there was only void. Darkness covered the surface of the deep. Silence prevailed over an empty world. But then God spoke. "Let there be light," He declared, and light pierced the darkness. God saw the light, and it was good. He separated it from the darkness, calling the light day and the darkness night. Thus, the first day came into being, defined by divine order. On the second day, God created an expanse between the waters to separate them. He called this expanse the sky. From chaos came structure. The third day brought the birth of land and sea. God gathered the waters to reveal dry land. He called the dry ground earth, and the gathered waters seas. Then, He commanded the earth to bring forth vegetation. Plants bearing seeds, trees bearing fruit, each according to its kind. Creation burst with green life and vibrant colors. On the fourth day, He adorned the sky with the sun to govern the day and the moon to rule the night. He scattered stars like diamonds across the darkness, not just for light but to mark seasons and time. On the fifth day, God turned to the waters and the sky. He created great sea creatures and every kind of bird. The oceans teemed with motion, and the skies danced with winged creatures. He blessed them, saying, "Be fruitful and multiply." On the sixth day, God created every land animal, livestock, wild beasts, and creeping things. Then came the pinnacle of creation. God said, "Let us make man in our image, in our likeness." So God created man and woman. In His own image, He created them. He gave them authority over every creature, every plant, and the earth itself. He blessed them and instructed them to fill the earth and steward it well. On the seventh day, God rested from all His work, not because He was tired, but to establish rest as holy. He sanctified the day, setting a precedent for rhythm and worship. This was not merely the birth of the universe, but the unveiling of God's intentional design. Every star, every tree, every breath of man, crafted with purpose and love. What we learn. The story of creation reveals God as the masterful creator, full of power, wisdom, and intention. Everything He made was good, and humanity was made in His very image. This narrative teaches us that life is not random. The world has order, purpose, and beauty by God's design. It reminds us that rest is sacred, creation is good, and we are called to reflect the Creator's character. How we can implement this? We can implement this lesson by observing rhythms of rest and worship in our weekly lives. We should care for the environment, honoring the world God created. More importantly, we should treat every human being as made in God's image, with dignity, love, and respect. When we wake each day, we can look around and see reminders of God's artistry in the skies, the ground, and in each other. Number 2. Cain and Abel. After Adam and Eve were cast out of the Garden of Eden, they had two sons, Cain and Abel. Cain was a farmer, tilling the ground, while Abel tended sheep. Both brought offerings to the Lord. Abel chose the finest portions from the firstborn of his flock. Cain, however, brought some of his crops without care or reverence. God accepted Abel's offering because it was given in faith and honor. But He did not look with favor upon Cain's. Instead of repenting or seeking God, Cain grew angry and resentful. The Lord warned him, "Sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it." But Cain did not listen. He invited Abel to go out into the field, and there, in jealousy and rage, Cain murdered his brother. When God asked, "Where is your brother Abel?" Cain lied and said, "I don't know. Am I my brother's keeper?" God responded, "What have you done? Your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground." God cursed Cain, making the ground unfruitful for him and condemning him to a life of wandering. Yet, even in punishment, God marked Cain with protection so no one would kill him. This story echoes with sorrow, but also justice and grace. What we learn: Cain and Abel show us that God is not only concerned with what we offer him, but how we offer it. Our motives, hearts, and humility matter. The story is also a warning about unchecked jealousy, pride, and the danger of comparing ourselves to others. How we can implement this? We must examine our intentions when giving or serving. Do we act out of love and faith, or obligation and pride? When we feel comparison or envy rising, we must confront it in prayer. We are our brother's keeper. We are called to love, protect, and lift others up, not tear them down. Number 3. Jacob wrestles with God. Jacob, the deceiver, had spent years away from his brother Esau, whom he had wronged. Now he was returning, fearful and uncertain of what awaited him. He sent gifts ahead to soften Esau's heart and divided his family to protect them, but he was left alone at night beside the Jabbok River. That night, a man appeared and wrestled with Jacob until the break of dawn. It was not just any man, it was God in physical form, an angel or divine being. The struggle was intense and enduring. Jacob held on with all his might, refusing to let go. As daybreak neared, the man touched Jacob's hip, dislocating it instantly. Still, Jacob clung to him and said, "I will not let you go unless you bless me." The man asked, "What is your name?" "Jacob," he answered. The man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob, but Israel, because you have struggled with God and with humans and have overcome." Jacob named the place Peniel, saying, "I have seen God face to face, and my life was spared." He limped away, forever changed. What we learn: wrestling with God is not rebellion, but relationship. Jacob's struggle shows us that faith sometimes involves persistence, questions, and discomfort. But those who cling to God, even in pain, receive transformation and blessing. How we can implement this? In times of spiritual crisis, don't let go. Wrestle in prayer. Ask hard questions. Stay with God until breakthrough comes. Our trials often lead us to deeper faith and a new identity, just as Jacob became Israel. Number 4. The call of Abraham. Abram lived in the city of Ur, surrounded by a culture of idol worship. One day, the voice of the Lord came to him with a command and a promise. "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household and go to the land I will show you," said the Lord. "I will make you into a great nation. I will bless you. I will make your name great. You will be a blessing." Though he did not know where he was going, Abram obeyed. At 75 years old, he gathered his family and possessions and set out for Canaan. He walked by faith, not sight. When he arrived, God appeared again and said, "To your offspring I will give this land." Abram built an altar to the Lord. Throughout his journey, he pitched tents and built altars, living as a traveler while trusting in a future promise. God changed his name to Abraham, meaning father of many, and made a covenant with him that would shape the destiny of nations. Abraham's faith became the foundation of a relationship between God and his chosen people. What we learn: Abraham's story teaches us that faith begins with obedience. He left behind everything familiar to follow the voice of God. God honors those who trust him, even when the path is unclear. How we can implement this? When God calls you to something uncertain, step forward in faith. Trust that he sees the end from the beginning. You may not have all the answers, but like Abraham, You can build a life of purpose on the promises of God. Number 5. The Tower of Babel. After the flood, humanity grew in number and settled on a plain in the land of Shinar. They spoke one language and began to build a great city with a tower that reached to the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, they said, so we won't be scattered over the face of the whole earth. They sought unity not for God's glory but for their own. Using bricks and mortar, they built not just a structure but a symbol of pride. The Lord came down to see the city and the tower. Seeing their prideful hearts, he said, if as one people speaking the same language they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be impossible for them. So God confused their language and scattered them across the earth. The building stopped, and the place was called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of the whole world. In a moment, the unity that exalted man was humbled by the wisdom of God. What we learn. The Tower of Babel reveals that human pride leads to confusion and division. When we try to exalt ourselves above God, our plans crumble. True unity only comes when God is at the center. How we can implement this? Before starting any endeavor, ask yourself, is this for God's glory or my own? Surrender your ambitions to the Lord and seek His purpose above your platform. Let humility lead your work and invite God to be the builder. Number 6. The Plagues of Egypt. Pharaoh ruled Egypt with a hardened heart, and God called Moses to lead his people out of slavery. When Pharaoh refused to let the Israelites go, God sent a series of plagues to reveal His power. First, the Nile turned to blood. Fish died, and the river stank. Next came frogs that covered the land, then gnats and flies swarming every home. Livestock died. Boils broke out on people and animals. Hail rained down like fire, destroying crops and homes. Then locusts came and devoured what was left. Darkness fell for 3 days, thick, heavy darkness. Yet Pharaoh's heart remained hard. Finally, the Lord told Moses of the last plague. At midnight, every firstborn in Egypt would die. To protect His people, God gave specific instructions: slaughter a lamb and paint its blood on the doorposts. That night, the angel of death passed over the homes marked in obedience. Every Egyptian household mourned. Pharaoh summoned Moses and told him to leave. The Israelites walked out of Egypt, free at last. God had shown His justice, His power, and His mercy. What we learn. God is patient but just. He gives opportunities for repentance, but He also defends the oppressed. Obedience, even in strange instructions, brings protection and deliverance. How we can implement this? When facing hardship or injustice, trust that God sees and will act in His time. Obey Him even when it doesn't make sense. Like the blood on the doorposts, your faith can mark your life for God's mercy. Number 7. Crossing the Red Sea. After Pharaoh finally let the Israelites go, Moses led them out of Egypt. But not long after they left, Pharaoh's heart turned again. He regretted letting them go and summoned his army. Chariots thundered across the desert in pursuit of the Israelites, who now found themselves trapped between the Red Sea and the Egyptian army. Panic spread. The people cried out to Moses, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us here to die?" But Moses stood firm and declared, "Do not be afraid. Stand firm and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today." God told Moses to raise his staff over the sea. That night the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. Walls of water stood on either side as the Israelites crossed. Behind them, Pharaoh's army followed. But God caused confusion among their chariots. Then God told Moses to stretch his hand over the sea again. The waters crashed back into place, swallowing the Egyptian army. Not one of them survived. The people stood in awe of God's power. Miriam, Moses' sister, led them in song, praising the Lord who had triumphed gloriously, throwing horse and rider into the sea. What we learn: God makes a way where there is no way. Even when we feel surrounded by fear and opposition, God is working for our deliverance. His power is unmatched, and His timing is perfect. How we can implement this? When you feel trapped by circumstances, don't panic. Stand in faith and wait for God's direction. Trust that He can part the sea in your life, turning obstacles into a path of freedom. Number 8. The 10 Commandments. After escaping Egypt, the Israelites journeyed to Mount Sinai. There, amidst thunder, lightning, and smoke, God descended in power. He called Moses up the mountain. For 40 days and nights, Moses remained on the summit, enveloped in the presence of God. It was there that God gave him laws not just for survival, but for holy living. He wrote with his own finger the 10 Commandments on stone tablets. These laws began with reverence for God. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make idols. You shall not take the Lord's name in vain. Remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. They continued with laws governing human relationships. Honor your father and mother. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. Do not steal. Do not bear false witness. Do not covet. Meanwhile, down below, the people grew restless. They fashioned a golden calf and worshipped it. Moses returned in fury, shattering the tablets. But God, in mercy, called him again and rewrote the laws. The 10 Commandments became the foundation of Israel's covenant with God, a mirror of His character and a guide for His people. What we learn: God gives us boundaries not to restrict us, but to lead us into blessing and holiness. His laws reveal His holiness and guide us into right living. How we can implement this? Treat God's word as sacred. Study His commandments and evaluate how you live. Let His standards shape your conscience and conduct. When you fail, return to Him. He is merciful and willing to restore. Number 9. Balaam and the Talking Donkey. Balaam was a prophet who lived near the land of Moab. One day, King Balak of Moab sent messengers to hire Balaam to curse the Israelites, who were encamped nearby. Though God told Balaam not to go, he was swayed by the king's promises and agreed. As Balaam rode his donkey to meet Balak, the angel of the Lord stood in the road to oppose him. The donkey saw the angel and veered into a field. Balaam struck her. Then the donkey pressed against the wall, crushing Balaam's foot. Again, he struck her. Finally, the donkey lay down beneath him. Balaam beat her a third time. Then, God opened the donkey's mouth. She said, "What have I done to you to make you beat me these 3 times?" Shocked, Balaam argued with the donkey. Then God opened Balaam's eyes, and he saw the angel standing with sword drawn. The angel said, "If your donkey had not turned away, I would have killed you." Balaam repented. Though he continued his journey, God did not allow him to curse Israel. Instead, Balaam was compelled to bless them multiple times. Even a disobedient prophet was redirected by God's mercy and power. What we learn: God sees our motives and uses even unusual means to protect us. Sometimes the obstacles we curse are actually His way of saving us from disaster. How we can implement this? Be attentive to God's warnings, even when they come in unexpected ways. Check your heart. Are you following God's will or your own gain? God may be using circumstances to redirect you before it's too late. Number 10. The walls of Jericho fall. After crossing the Jordan River, the Israelites approached the fortified city of Jericho. Its thick walls towered over them, shut tight in fear of God's people. But instead of using weapons or ladders, God gave Joshua a strange command. For 6 days, the Israelites were to march once around the city with the Ark of the Covenant, silently, while priests blew trumpets. On the 7th day, they were to march around the city 7 times. After the final lap, the priests would give one long blast, and the people were to shout. So they did. Day after day, they marched in silence. Only the sound of footsteps and trumpet echoes broke the stillness. On the 7th day, after the 7th lap, Joshua shouted, "Shout, for the Lord has given you the city." The people raised their voices, and the walls collapsed. Every stone crumbled, and the city was conquered without sword or siege. Only Rahab and her family were spared, because she had hidden Israelite spies. The victory wasn't military, it was miraculous, given by God to a faithful and obedient people. What we learn: God's ways are not our ways. Victory often comes not through strength, but through obedience and trust in His timing and strategy. How we can implement this? When facing impossible challenges, obey God's voice even if His instructions seem unusual. Your breakthrough may be on the other side of faithful, silent obedience. Number 11. Samson and Delilah. Samson was chosen by God before birth to be a Nazirite, set apart to deliver Israel from the Philistines. He had supernatural strength, tied to a vow that included never cutting his hair. Though empowered by God, Samson often acted impulsively. He married a Philistine woman, and later fell in love with another, Delilah. The Philistine rulers bribed her to discover the secret of his strength. 3 times she asked, and 3 times Samson lied. Yet she continued to press him. Day after day, she nagged him until his soul was vexed to death. He finally told her, "If my head is shaved, my strength will leave me." While he slept, she cut his hair and called the Philistines. They seized him, gouged out his eyes, and imprisoned him. But his hair began to grow again. During a celebration, the Philistines brought Samson out to mock him in their temple. He asked to be placed between the pillars. He prayed, "Lord, strengthen me one last time." Then he pushed with all his might. The pillars gave way, and the temple collapsed, killing Samson and thousands of Philistines. Samson died, but in his final moment, he fulfilled his divine calling. What we learn: gifts without discipline lead to downfall. But even in failure, God can still fulfill His purpose through repentance and faith. How we can implement this? Guard your calling with wisdom. Don't trade long-term purpose for temporary pleasure. But if you've fallen, remember, God can still use your life when you surrender to Him. Number 12. Jesus heals the blind man. As Jesus walked with His disciples, they encountered a man blind from birth. The disciples asked, "Who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" Jesus replied, "Either. This happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him." He knelt down, spit on the ground, and made mud with the saliva. He placed the mud on the man's eyes and said, "Go wash in the pool of Siloam." The man obeyed. He went, washed, and returned able to see for the first time in his life. Neighbors were astonished. Pharisees interrogated him, demanding answers. The man boldly testified, "One thing I know, I was blind, but now I see." The religious leaders cast him out, but Jesus found him again. He said, "Do you believe in the Son of Man?" The man replied, "Lord, I believe," and worshipped him. The miracle was not just physical, it was spiritual. The blind man gained both sight and salvation. Those who thought they could see, like the Pharisees, remained blind to who Jesus truly was. What we learn: Jesus meets us in our brokenness. He restores not just bodies, but hearts. Healing requires both obedience and faith. How we can implement this. Trust Jesus in areas where you feel blind or broken. Obey even when the method seems odd. Share your testimony boldly, because what Jesus has done in your life is powerful beyond argument.